Have you ever stopped to think about what really lies hidden in the icy depths of Canada? I'm not talking about Niagara Falls or the illuminated CN Tower in Toronto, much less the postcards you see in any tourist guide. I'm talking about the Canada that nobody shows you. The one that exists beyond the city lights, lost among endless forests and snow-capped mountains, where silence is not just the absence of sound, it's a presence. And that presence holds stories that most people prefer not to hear. While millions of tourists crisscross the country taking photos of idyllic landscapes, a dark side lies hidden in the vast Canadian wilderness. Entire cities abandoned overnight. Hospitals where death was routine and no one left alive. Cabins lost in provincial parks where isolation transformed men into something different. These places exist. They are there, waiting. And each one carries legends so disturbing that even the locals avoid pronouncing their names after the sun sets. Have you ever experienced this? That strange feeling when you re alone in an abandoned place and you re absolutely certain someone is watching you? Well, that is exactly what hundreds of people report when visiting the places I'm going to show you today. These aren't just internet stories or urban legends invented to scare children. They are real, documented accounts from people who had the courage to go where few dare. Today, I'm going to take you to 5 haunted places lost in the Canadian wilderness. Places that official history prefers to forget, but which insist on reminding us that they exist. We'll visit a ghost town where miners disappeared deep underground and were never found again. An abandoned hospital where thousands died in isolation, far from their families, and where voices can still be heard in the empty corridors. A cabin in the middle of Ontario's most remote forest, discovered with marks of despair on the walls, and a table set as if someone were still coming back for dinner. And other places that will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about Canada. If you enjoy true mystery stories, abandoned places, and the darkest legends hidden in nature, then subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications, because this video will give you chills from beginning to end. And look, I know it sounds like an exaggeration, but stick with me until the end. What you're about to discover might completely change the way you see this country. Many people think hauntings are just something from movies, that haunted places only exist in Victorian houses with creaking staircases. But the truth is much more disturbing. The most haunted places in the world aren't in Gothic mansions. They are isolated, forgotten, lost where no one else goes. They are in frozen mountains, in endless forests, in cities that have become ghost towns. And Canada, with its vast wilderness and its history marked by tragedies, has some of the most unsettling places you can imagine. What makes these places even more terrifying isn't just the legends. It's the fact that they actually existed. Real people lived there, worked there, suffered there, and many never left. Their stories remain trapped within those crumbling walls, echoing eternally in the icy wind that sweeps across the Canadian plains. So get ready, because what comes next isn't for everyone. We're about to begin our journey into the dark side of Canada, and our first destination is a place where an entire city has vanished from the map. Our first destination is hidden in the mountains of British Columbia, a place that very few people know today, but which was once home to thousands. I'm talking about Anyox, a town that literally disappeared from the map. And look, when I say disappeared, I'm not using a metaphor. This town really existed, prospered, and then simply ceased to exist. To understand the brutal transformation this place has undergone, I need to take you back to the 1910s. Back then, Anyox was the American dream in the heart of the Canadian wilderness. A mining town that sprang up out of nowhere, built around one of the country's largest copper operations. Imagine a complete community: schools, hospitals, shops, cinemas, even its own hydroelectric power plant. More than 3,000 people lived there, working in the mines, building their lives, raising their families. It was an isolated paradise where you could make a fortune if you had the courage to face the hard work deep in the mountains. But all this prosperity came at a price. The Anyox mines were deep, dangerous, and demanded difficult decisions every day. Accidents were common. Men would go down for the morning shift and simply not return. Their families waited on the surface, praying that it wouldn't be their day. And for many, eventually it was. The hidden truth behind Anyox's wealth has always been the blood spilled within those mountains. Then came 1935. The Great Depression had devastated the world economy, and suddenly, without warning, the mine closed. It wasn't a gradual process. It was abrupt, violent in its speed. In a matter of weeks, thousands of people were forced to abandon everything. Entire houses left with furniture inside, personal belongings in drawers, lives interrupted mid-sentence. Most took only the essentials and left, because there was simply no reason to stay. Without the mine, Anyox was nothing. And this is where the story gets disturbing, because there are accounts, documented by urban explorers and local historians, that not all the miners left those tunnels. There are records of men who were working when the evacuation order came, but who never reached the surface. Some say they were forgotten in the rush of the evacuation. Others whisper that perhaps they never had the chance to get out. The mines were sealed, the city abandoned, and what happened down there, well, that was buried along with it. Today, when you visit the ruins of Anyox, the visual impact is devastating. The hospital still stands, its empty windows staring out at the ocean, like blind eyes gazing into nothingness. Houses crumble, swallowed by the vegetation that has reclaimed its territory. The hydroelectric plant, once the beating heart of the city, is now just a shell of concrete and rust, all covered by that heavy silence that only truly abandoned places possess. But what's most disturbing are the accounts of those who dare to visit this place. Residents of nearby towns avoid Anyox, especially after nightfall. They say that some souls are trapped in the mountain, that you can hear strange sounds echoing from the sealed entrances of the mines. Metallic banging, as if someone were still working down there. Voices calling names that no one remembers anymore. Some swear they've seen lights moving inside the ruined hospital, even knowing that there hasn't been electricity there for almost 90 years. Anyox's journey is a journey through so many forgotten places, from promised paradise to abandoned nightmare. And the feeling that lingers when you're there, surrounded by these silent ruins, is that perhaps some things shouldn't be forgotten so quickly. Perhaps there are memories that insist on remaining, whether they want to or not. Comment below. Anyox gave me chills. I want to know if you'd have the courage to spend a night in that place. But Anyox is nothing compared to what's coming next. Now let me take you to a place where suffering wasn't the exception, it was the rule. Where people were sent to die far from those they loved, isolated from the world, without any real hope of healing. I'm talking about the Tranquille Sanatorium in Kamloops, British Columbia. And look, This isn't one of those places you hear about and think, oh, it must be a legend. No, this place really operated from 1907 to 1958, and what happened within those walls is documented, recorded, real. Tranquille was built as a tuberculosis sanatorium at a time when the disease was practically a death sentence. You would receive the diagnosis and be sent there, far from your family, because tuberculosis was highly contagious and society simply isolated you. The mentality of the time was brutal. Better to sacrifice a few than to risk infecting many. Thousands of people passed through that place and most never returned home. They died there, alone, looking out the window at mountains they could never explore again. The treatments were what we would call medical torture today. Patients were exposed to the frigid Canadian winter air for hours, believing this would purify their lungs. Experimental surgeries were performed without proper anesthesia. Ribs were removed to collapse the lungs in a desperate attempt to kill the bacteria. The hidden truth is that many patients didn't die from tuberculosis itself, but from the treatments. And the worst part? They had no choice. It was either accept it or be completely excluded from society. But Tranquille's darkest transformation came later. When tuberculosis cases began to decline with the arrival of antibiotics, the place didn't close. It was converted into a psychiatric hospital. And if you think things improved, prepare yourself, because they got worse. The behind-the-scenes details of this new phase reveal even more disturbing practices. Shock therapy, lobotomies, prolonged isolation in padded cells. People with mental health problems were treated as prisoners, not as patients. The psychological impact of this place on those who passed through it is impossible to calculate. Today, the Tranquille Sanatorium has become a kind of tourist attraction. You can visit the ruins, walk through the corridors where thousands agonized. But here's a revelation that few tourists expect. Almost no one can stay there after sunset. It's not fussiness. It's not an impression. It's something you feel in your skin when you're there. A tightness in your chest, a visceral certainty that you are not alone. The accounts are too consistent to be mere imagination. Children's voices echoing through empty corridors, calling for their mothers who never came back for them. Shadows moving on the other side of broken windows, figures appearing and disappearing when you try to focus your gaze. And worst of all, that unmistakable feeling of being watched in the old infirmaries. You enter one of those empty rooms and simply know that someone is there with you. Urban explorers, tour guides, even staunch skeptics report the same thing. What makes Tranquille especially disturbing isn't just the ghost stories. It's knowing that it all really happened. That those walls witnessed real suffering, impossible decisions, lives cut short long before their time. It's not fantasy, it's history. And perhaps that's exactly why this place seems unable to forget its own past. As if the pain has become ingrained in the concrete, the wood, the icy air that still circulates through those corridors. Some people say that places like this hold memories. That intense suffering leaves a mark on the physical world, a kind of energetic scar that never fully heals. I don't know if I believe that, but I can tell you one thing. After learning the story of Tranquille, it's difficult to simply dismiss those possibilities. Write in the comments, Tranquille is too real. I want to know if you feel the same weight I feel when talking about this place. And if you think abandoned hospitals are scary, just wait until you see what comes next. Let me tell you about a different kind of terror. It's not the fear of entire abandoned cities or hospitals steeped in history. It's something much more intimate, claustrophobic, personal. It's the fear of absolute isolation. I'm talking about a cabin lost in the heart of Algonquin Provincial Park in Ontario, one of the most remote and wild areas in Canada. And this story will show you how solitude can literally destroy the human mind. In the 19th century, lumberjacks lived for months in isolation in the forest, felling trees and surviving in brutal conditions. Many of these cabins were never officially registered. They simply sprouted up in the middle of nowhere and disappeared over time. But there is one in particular that was discovered by hikers in the 80s, and what they found inside completely changed their journey. The cabin was intact. Personal belongings were scattered across the shelves, clothes hung as if the owner had just left. And then comes the chilling detail. The table was set. Plate, cutlery, mug, everything arranged as if someone were about to sit down for dinner at any moment. But what truly disturbed the explorers were the marks on the interior walls. Deep scratches in the wood, as if someone had desperately tried to escape. Or perhaps, as if they were trying to remember they were still human. Local legend tells of a lumberjack who became trapped there during the harsh winter of 1892. 6 months of uninterrupted snow, temperatures reaching 40 degrees below zero without any human contact. The transformation that occurs in the mind under these conditions is devastating. First comes the conversation with oneself, then with inanimate objects. Then the hallucinations begin. Voices in the forest, shadows moving among the trees, and eventually you can no longer distinguish what is real from what your mind has created to avoid going completely insane. This lumberjack was never found. He simply disappeared, as if the forest had swallowed him. But what's most disturbing are the modern experiences. Campers who camp in that region swear they hear the sound of axes chopping wood at night. When they go to investigate, there's no one there. Footprints in the snow that appear out of nowhere and simply disappear without explanation. That oppressive feeling of being watched from the trees, as if something ancient and patient is waiting for you to make a wrong move. And there are recent reports of cabins found with fires still burning in the fireplace, smoke rising from the chimney, but no sign of human presence. Here's a little-known fact. Algonquin park rangers avoid certain areas even during the day. There are unofficial trails they explicitly recommend never following. When you ask why, the answer is always vague, but the impact on their eyes is real. They saw something, they felt something, and they made the decision not to return. Comment below. Loneliness scares me more than ghosts, because there's something in this story that goes beyond the supernatural, you know? It's about what happens when we remove human beings from the social equation. But what happened in that cabin is just a whisper compared to the silent scream of our next destination. I need to talk now about something that goes beyond urban legends or ghost stories. This touches on real historical wounds, on tragedies that have stained Canada in ways that many people prefer not to remember. There are remote areas in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, lost in the vastness of the Canadian forest, where something profoundly wrong happened. And these lands have not forgotten. I'm talking about the places where the Indigenous residential boarding schools operated. For those unfamiliar with this dark chapter in Canadian history, these were places where Indigenous children were forcibly taken, separated from their families, and forbidden from speaking their languages or practicing their cultures. The prevailing mentality at the time was one of assimilation, but the hidden truth was far more cruel. Thousands of children suffered physical, psychological, and sexual abuse in these places. Many never returned home. Their bodies were buried in unmarked graves. Their families never knew what happened to them. The impact of this tragedy hasn't faded with time. These lands carry a weight you feel when you're there. It's not imagination, it's something palpable. Experienced hunters, people who have spent their entire lives in the Canadian forests, refuse to enter certain areas. They don't talk much about why, but when they do, they mention voices. Voices of children calling out in the forest, crying, searching for someone who never came back for them. Indigenous legends have always spoken of protective spirits of these lands, of entities that do not want intruders. The Wendigo, for example, a creature from the mythology of various indigenous nations, represents insatiable hunger, the greed that consumes everything. But here is the revelation that many people do not understand. These legends are not just scary stories told around the campfire. They are warnings. They are the way these cultures processed and transmitted truths about nature, about the respect we should have for certain places, certain memories. What makes these areas especially disturbing is not the supposed paranormal phenomena. It's knowing that the pain was real, that children truly suffered there, that families were destroyed, that an entire culture was systematically attacked. These are not just legends, they are memories of real pain that still echo in these lands. And perhaps, just perhaps, some things in nature have a memory of their own. Perhaps the forest witnessed so much injustice that it simply refuses to let it be forgotten. I need to make one thing clear. These places deserve respect, not morbid curiosity. They are not tourist attractions. They are not backdrops for Instagram photos. They are sacred places marked by real human tragedy. The journey to these stories must be accompanied by awareness and responsibility. Wild Canada holds secrets that perhaps should never be disturbed, and part of respecting these lands is recognizing that some doors do not need to be opened. Write in the comments, respect above all else, because this story is bigger than any mystery. It's about acknowledging the weight of history and honoring those who suffered. Look, if you've made it this far, you've walked with me through 5 places where the past literally refuses to die. From Anyox, where an entire town became a ghost town overnight, to the indigenous lands that carry memories of pain that still echo in the forest. We saw Tranquille, where thousands died in isolation. The lost cabin in Algonquin, where solitude transformed a man into something he perhaps no longer recognized himself. And we concluded with the historical weight of places that deserve much more than our curiosity. They deserve our respect. Now I want to know from you, which of these places would you have the courage to visit? Or better yet, which one gave you the most goosebumps? Comment below. I made it to the end, and tell me which story moved you the most. I read all the comments, really, and I love to know what you thought. If you enjoy this type of content, true mystery stories, abandoned places with dark pasts, then subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because I am always bringing you these revelations that nobody else shows. And while you're at it, leave a like here, because that helps me continue producing this kind of content for you. And I'm already preparing the next video, which will be even more intense. Speaking of which, there's a video over here where I show real abandoned cities that are now considered haunted. There you'll find things that were left behind, and that tell stories that go far beyond what we imagine. Click and continue with me there, because the journey through Canadian mysteries is just beginning. Until next time, if you have the courage to come back,